Welcome to this course on Windows Azure Programming. My name is Bill Loden, and I'll be your instructor. Before we dive right in, just a few notes about what you should expect. My goal is to get you up to speed and get you programming on the Windows Azure platform. This is not a how to program course, it's more about how to use Azure. The video content you'll see will consist of slides and demonstrations. The demos will be in C#, but all of the concepts apply to other languages that are supported by the Windows Azure platform. Let's get started. In this first lecture, we'll take a look at Microsoft's take on cloud computing. In particular, we'll look at how Microsoft's vision for the cloud maps to the general definition of cloud computing. In subsequent lectures, I'll provide you with an overview of the features that Windows Azure includes, and we'll wrap up this section with a tour of the Windows Azure Management Portal. I'll even walk you through the sign-up process so you can get started yourself. You might already be familiar with the National Institute of Standards and Technology and its definition of cloud computing, and if not, here it is. Now, technically, this is just the beginning of their definition, but it's enough for us right now. Not everyone agrees that this accurately represents cloud computing, but it is the closest thing we have to a standard definition. I think it's useful because it defines some common terminology to discuss. More specifically, it calls out 5 characteristics, 3 service models, and 4 deployment models. In a moment, I'll show you how Microsoft's Windows Azure meets this definition of cloud computing. So, speaking of Microsoft, how do they define cloud computing? Microsoft has a fairly simple and straightforward definition. They define the cloud as an approach to computing that's about internet scale and connecting to a variety of devices and endpoints. Now, there's nothing wrong about this definition, or there's nothing inconsistent with the NIST definition. It just simplifies things a bit too much. So let's go back to the NIST definition, beginning with the 5 essential characteristics. And these are on-demand self-service, broad network access, resource pooling, rapid elasticity, and measured service. Since these are defined by the NIST as being essential to cloud computing, how does Microsoft measure up? Well, very well actually. Let's start at the top. On-demand self-service refers to a cloud infrastructure's ability to be automated. Customers should be able to provision and manage resources in the cloud without having to contact a call center or wait for some sort of approval process. And this is true with Windows Azure. Microsoft provides a management portal where you can manage all sorts of resources. Broad network access means that cloud capabilities are available over a network and that they can be accessed using standard protocols. This is certainly true of Windows Azure, which can provide services to any type of computer or mobile device. Resource pooling refers to the fact that the actual cloud hardware, the networks, switches, and rack or blade servers, are shared by multiple clients. Windows Azure is multi-tenant, which means you are allocated resources out of a shared pool. This model provides for a lot of flexibility. You may share a virtual machine and pay very little, or even get it for free, or you can pay a lot and get 8 cores of processing power dedicated to you. Either way, it's coming from a shared infrastructure. Rapid elasticity is the ability for cloud resources to scale up and down to match demand. Windows Azure provides the ability to increase or decrease the number of instances in your applications or services. The final characteristic is that cloud computing is a measured service, and that is certainly true in the case of Windows Azure. Microsoft measures the amount of time you run virtual machines, the amount of storage you use, and the amount of bandwidth you consume. Everything is tracked and recorded in a billing system which you can see at any time, and you pay for what you use. The next element of the NIST definition are the 3 service models. To explain these, let's talk about software. Think of any application you've built. It probably sits on top of a fairly extensive stack of technology. You've got your data, possibly a runtime like Java or .NET, and an operating system. In the cloud, the OS is nearly always virtual. Below that, you've got the raw disk drives, the physical server, and the physical network itself. The key to these 3 service models is in what is managed by the cloud vendor and what is managed by the consumer. With software as a service, the vendor manages everything. The consumer simply uses the application. With platform as a service, the vendor manages everything up to the runtime. The consumer only has to provide the application and any data it requires. Finally, we have infrastructure as a service. The cloud vendor is still responsible for the physical infrastructure and the virtualization environment, but the consumer handles everything else. This allows for much more flexibility, but in return, the consumer has more to manage. Microsoft provides all three of these service models, and once again they present it in a very straightforward manner. To Microsoft, infrastructure as a service is about hosting, platform as a service is about building, and software as a service is about consuming. In the Microsoft Cloud, Windows Azure provides both infrastructure as a service and platform as a service. Regarding software as a service, remember that it's all about delivering applications to consumers that just use the functionality. Now, Microsoft has several properties that could be considered software as a service, but the most obvious one is Office 365. If you subscribe to Office 365, you can get email, word processing, spreadsheets, and all that within your browser. There's no software to install or to upgrade or manage. This class is about building, not consuming, so we're going to draw a line here and focus on the Windows Azure side of things. I should point out that Windows Azure is a great platform for building software as a service applications, but it's going to be your software, not Microsoft's. The last element of the NIST definition is the four deployment models: private cloud, community cloud, public cloud, and hybrid cloud. Let's start with the private cloud. Microsoft does have a strategy for private cloud, but Windows Azure isn't it. If you want to build a private cloud using Microsoft technologies, you can do it with Windows Server and System Center. The latest versions of these products are designed to have cloud characteristics, and certainly they've been influenced by the work being done with Windows Azure. Community cloud is not particularly common, but if you were to build a community cloud, it would look a lot like a private cloud, and again, you could use Windows Server and System Center. You probably guessed it, but Windows Azure is a public cloud. The features and capabilities of Windows Azure are available to anyone who signs up for an account and pays for the services. Amazon's AWS, Google's Compute Engine, these are other public clouds that offer cloud services similar to Windows Azure. The fourth and final deployment model is hybrid. According to NIST, hybrid cloud is a mix of the other deployment models. For instance, you might build a private cloud using the infrastructure in your existing on-premises data center and then connect it to additional server resources in a public cloud. You can certainly use Microsoft technologies to build a private cloud and then leverage Windows Azure for additional capacity. But really, you can do hybrid with just about any existing hardware on-premises. It doesn't have to be officially private cloud. Later in the section, I'll introduce you to some of the features that Microsoft offers to support these types of hybrid scenarios. So by this point, you should have a good idea of what cloud computing is and how Microsoft's Windows Azure maps to the standard definition of cloud computing. In the next lecture, we'll take a closer look at Windows Azure and explore its features in more detail.